Frankenmath, myth or real? Has the monkey got lame? First off, I have no financial interests, I'm not a financial advisor, and I have no sponsored links on my video. However, you will find a PDF in the description on the video with all the sources I use to usually argue what I'm trying to educate with my videos, because this channel is for educational purposes only. Today I will be talking about the blog from Galgitron on Twitter, Frankenmath. Basically there are two theories how price of XRP can or maybe will rise. Slow and steady with accelerating progress, which means over years, versus the fast and steep within minutes, possibly hours, like Shane Ellis predicted. Galgitron has two blogs. You can see that in the PDF on the video. One where he basically explains why the price will rise slowly, with a monkey who is going crazy from time to time. And today we're looking at why the monkey is a little bit lame. In another blog entry of his, the Frankenmath, he's basically explaining why there is simply no possibility that the price will rise fast. And today I basically would like to delve into these arguments a little bit, why Galgitron thinks there is no way. First off, let me summarize the Frankenmath document rapidly. Galgitron looks first at how exchanges work, how a trade works on an exchange. Then he's going into the concept of buy and sell pressure, and he explains a little bit about arbitrage. I will take the buy and sell pressure argument and talk about it, and I will talk about the arbitrage document. At the end of this video I will be talking about, I think, 11 ridiculous reasons he has counter arguments for why the price will or has to rise fast. Stay with me, please. Buy and sell pressure. Let me explain. Sell pressure exists when the price is high, as most people would want to get rich and thus would want to sell their assets. Okay? Theory tells that when a lot of people want to sell, buyers offer a smaller price because they see there is a lot of sellers, so why should we pay a lot? Let's offer less. And thus the price drops to where it was before the rise. Buy pressure is the opposite. It exists when the price is low and new investors want to get in the market. Principally, I think this theory or this mechanism is correct. If you look at least at traditional markets and professional traders. Practically, I think in crypto market it's more or less the opposite of what's happening. Every time the price jumps, new investors rush in due to FOMO, fear of missing out. Because they only believe once the price surges, now we see we can make some money, we also want to participate. See the charts in the PDF on page 2. Okay, maybe some may argue that this idea of mine that it's actually the opposite of how Galgitron is putting his argument. Let's leave that open. I want to show, however, and I will as usual, I have some figures to base my argument. I want to show that the buy pressure can and most likely still will be higher than the sell pressure. Let's check that first on the amount of existing transactions. Since a few months now, TPS, transactions per second, have risen. It used to be somewhere between 5 and 10 throughout almost all 2018. When we not look at the periods of price increase, but lately, in the past, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 months, it has risen more or less constantly above 10 and between 10 and 15 somewhere. So how can this rise be explained? I have actually made a tweet about that. I think it may be related to remittances. And we all know that many Ripple has partnerships with many remittance companies, Qualix, Mercury FX, some in Asia, and as of recently, obviously, MoneyGram. If we do those numbers, let's look at it. The total global remittance market yearly is about 800 billion or less. I think it used to be somewhere around 650 billion 2 years ago. Let's assume RippleNet covers about 10%, and let's also assume those 10% go via XRP already, because according to David Schwartz, low value, high volume is totally possible even at the current price. That would give us, for all those RippleNet remittance companies, about 80 million a year. If we divide that by 360 for days, by 86,400 for the seconds, and by 5 TPS, as we have seen recently this increase of TPS, we reach a value of about $500. And if we think that this amount is about an appropriate amount for an average remittance, then the above calculation would obviously be more or less correct. And I think $500 is more or less fine. Could be that we're not at 10% already, which would reduce that amount appropriately. Let's say we are just at 5% of the global remittances, then it's like $300. And I think this is a rather good value. When I send money to the family of my wife in Brazil, it's usually around $500 or less. Okay. You can check those information regarding the global yearly remittance total in a link in the PDF in the description. You can also see on page 2, I mentioned that before, of the PDF, the spikes we had since the end of 2017. But let's continue now with those transactions where I would want to show the sell pressure. In effect, we do have buy pressure today already. If we assume that those 5 TPS more than we used to have in the past year are remittances. These 5 TPS would give us roughly 432,000 transactions a day. Okay? Now let's assume that XRP has a high price, which would basically bring way more transactions even, because basically each transaction, whatever height of value, could be executed. Something between $1,000 and $5,000. We know that Swift GPI already since the beginning of this year has about 30 million transactions a day. So in order to increase buy pressure to the same amount of the sell pressure, and I will look at the sell pressure in a little bit, we would need about 85,000 orders a day. We have seen before that already the buy pressure from the remittances is quite high, and when we would just have about 1% of Swift market share, that'll be about 300,000 messages a day with huge value in target 2. The average transaction with about 340,000 transactions a day is about 5 million. So please don't tell me that there wouldn't be any buy pressure. Now let's look how Galgitron gets to the 85,000 XRP holders and sell orders, which would immediately open up once the price is high. We know now that sell pressure means that once the price is high, people would wanna sell XRP. The 85,000 people or sell orders Galgitron is mentioning, actually is mentioning 66, but that was a while back. What he was looking at was the 66,000, which is today 85,000 people, XRP holders, which have more than 10,000. Galgitron was doing his calculation with $100. So basically every XRP holder with more than 10,000 XRP at a price of $100 per XRP would be millionaire. And now we basically know that from two sides the buy pressure, even if it's just 1% of the Swift transaction volume at a high price, which basically would guarantee that the full 1% of whatever value is going through the system could be transacted. So I'm pretty sure the buy pressure will be higher. I've put the table into the PDF where you can check those numbers yourself. But let's assume Galgitron is right and the sell pressure is higher because we have a lot of people who want to sell all their XRP. What he doesn't take into account is the fact that the sell pressure would exactly hold 1 day. Okay? Whereas the buy pressure is continuously high, because after that 1 day not one XRP holder would be in the market anymore, and we could play this steep and high price increase again, with the additional effect if Galgitron is correct and there is sell pressure and the price after a steep and high rise would drop back to the below dollar area, that would even mean that many of those 85,000 XRP holders wouldn't even be millionaires after they had sold their XRP. Okay, now let's take a look at the other main argument of his I think one of his favorite arguments, the arbitrage. And I have argued that a long time back when I was kind of explaining the Shane Ellis theory in depth. Galvatron thinks an XRP buyer, once XRP has a high price on a preferred XRapid exchange, would go to another exchange, would buy at 50 cents and then come back and sell on the preferred XRapid exchange, where he would know he could get $100 or whatever the price would be. My argument, however, is everyone, the whole community, is waiting for XRapid to increase the price. So at the moment that happens, no one, even on non-preferred XRapid exchanges, would sell his XRP anymore. Once he knew that on those preferred XRapid exchanges he could get $100. The price on all exchanges would rise immediately. Maybe there would be 5 or 10 or maybe a bit more people who could get into this arbitrage until all those sell orders would have been adjusted, but it'll not be big compared to the flood of buy and sell orders, of this buy and sell pressure in total. Okay. Now let's look at some counter arguments. Galvatron also argues that banks would never pay billions to make us millionaires in order to save millions. So is it really just millions? I have put a link to a tweet of mine into the PDF, but actually in that tweet I think I made a link to a document from Ripple themselves. In that document they basically show what actually makes the cross-border payments expensive, and it's not the fees as such, it's basically the nostros themselves, which of course the banks hand over or hand on to the customers actually doing transaction, but obviously the banks will always keep a profit for themselves. But let's also look at that a little bit. So GPI has about $300 billion going through daily. In a year with 250 days, business days, that's about $75 trillion a year. We can assume that there are fees to be paid by customers between 5 and 10%, which would be between 3.7 and 7.5 trillion per year. Galvatron assumes that the fees are somewhere in like 0.00001% or something, because he's kind of referring to millions, but we definitely know it's not millions. On a yearly basis it's literally trillions. My calculation, my figures based on a very, very, very conservative 200 billion cost of the Nostro accounts yearly. Okay, now if I would ask you, can you pay, if you have a yearly cost of 10 million for something, would you pay 10 million or 20, maybe even 30 million to me, knowing that after a year you wouldn't have any cost anymore? And certainly you would, especially banks, because they always do investment calculations, net present value, return on investment, and other calculations. And usually those figures, even though they take a different perspective, a different angle, but they always look at the same thing roughly. In which point in time I'm starting to make a profit from an investment. And usually it's between 3 and 5 years. So each bank today, or 2 years already on RippleNet, would want to see a return on investment by now, meaning the invested cost should be paid off more or less already within at least this year. Now coming back to the actual value. In Galgitron's calculation with $100 and the 85,000 XRP holders, which have more than 10,000 XRP, that would roughly be $850 billion. Okay, we can assume that from those 3.7 to 7.5 trillion which the whole system cost, for sure there will be enough money to save for that amount of money at $100. It even would be enough, more or less, to pay out a lot of those XRP holders at $1,000, knowing that for sure not everyone would cash out all of their XRP holding. I had last week a discussion with Galgitron about his Frankenmath document, and the reason is there was a Twitter user who asked him, and how do you know it won't happen steep and fast? And Galgitron referenced his own blog entry, and I basically answered to Galgitron, now you must watch out to not become ridiculous yourself, that you argue you know something by a blog you have written yourself. He then told me that I should rather criticize his blog entry than how he posted it, because he's basically always offering additional sources. And I read his blog entry, Frankenmath, and I basically haven't found any backing material, external backing material in that blog entry which supports that even at a high price, which would guarantee basically all transactions on RippleNet could go through, the sell pressure would be high. It's just a theory which exists, I admit that, but once we use XRapid with a high price, the buy pressure for those volumes of high value transaction will be so big, and he didn't have any reference for that actually. The only reference he had as an external link, as an argument which basically his whole theory of the slow and steady price rise is based on, was a tweet from David Schwartz in May 2018. But even in that tweet, David referenced the past. So even in May 2018, we couldn't imply what the idea was for the remainder of 2018. Not even talking about 2019, where we are now. But make yourself your own opinion. I have posted the link on that tweet, and you can go and figure it out yourself. I had on several topics then a little discussions with Galgitron, and one was the time when I mentioned that in 2017 about over 700 new millionaires alone in US have been created, and his argument was, well, those have been quasi almost already millionaires the year before, but all of a sudden it's possible, and they will all sell their houses, whatever, because their house price increased. No, they wouldn't. They want to still keep on living in their houses. No sell pressure. Okay? And with this time argument, I could as well argue then we just hold, which still wouldn't validate Galgitron's theory that there would never be such amount of money to be paid out to the XRP hodlers. Okay, now as a final part, let's do a quick look on those 11 ridiculous arguments for a high and fast price surge, where Galgitron basically has his counter arguments. I will just pretty quickly go through them. Number one, nobody will sell their XRP, which means XRP price will surge high. He thinks everyone will sell. I think I'm pretty sure only few will sell all their XRP at the high prices. Why should they? But this we will see. Number two, it's only the order book that needs to be bought out. A few $1 million can send the price soaring. Here's counter argument. I think Galgitron thinks the sell pressure would bring the price to 50 cents again. I have before explained why I think the buy pressure would be way higher at a high price even. In addition, the buy and sell walls will keep the price stable. And of this I'm 100% sure. And I will think about how to illustrate that and make a separate video about that. But we'll see. Argument number three. Ripple has 66 billion of XRP and they buy, or dollars, and they buy all early adopters XRP back. Galgitron thinks it's a ridiculous argument. So do I. That's really not applicable to the high price surge. Argument number four. Banks are willing to spend 66 billion or this 85 billion, which would be needed now to be able to use XRapid at a high price, $100 in that sense. I mentioned it before, my very conservative calculation is that the cost of the nostrils worldwide yearly is at least 200 billion. So they would easily, with no doubt, pay the 85 billion to pay out all the 85,000 XRP holders with more than 10,000 XRP at $100. But remember, the figure I came to more realistic cost was between 3.7 and 7.5 trillion a year. Okay? Argument number five. Buy and sell walls can hold the price. He tries to debunk the wall theory. I still think he doesn't know how the process actually works. Argument number six. Ripple is willing to cover slippage to make it possible for XRapid to remain competitive. I've shown in another video, unfortunately the proof on one of those videos has been edited out, that Miguel Diaz stated that Ripple will be able to cover initial slippage while they eat through the order book. And even here I think there is a misunderstanding between me and Galgitron, because when he first countered my Shane Ellis theory, he was talking about consumption slippage, and now he's basically defending the volatility slippage only. But I'm not so sure that we will see. Argument number 7. There is a veritable tidal wave of XRapid customers just waiting on the sidelines for XRP to hit the right price point before they start using it. He thinks it's just not true. There's not enough XRapid users. Did he miss the train with Xcurrent supporting multi-hop? Each Xcurrent user can send payments via Xrapid, pending there is an installation of Xrapid in that particular country or currency area, like the euro. And as a side note, that's the reason why the MoneyGram deal is so important. They cover about 200 countries worldwide, with about over 40 currency pairs existing already, and when we consider EU with all of its euro countries as another 20%, we could say that about 40% of all those countries are already covered with a currency pair and XRP. So that's not really a small thing. And as well, he doesn't seem to know the superhighway theory, where Ripple has been working since 2015 already with system integrators, which will actually help scale RippleNet, because those 200 customers we know are direct Ripple customers. But I'm sure those, I don't know, about 10, I did a research on about 4 or 5 of those system integrators, but those 10 together will have brought, I'm pretty sure, way over 1,000 additional customers, which are not really Ripple's customers. It's customers from those system integrators. For sure, those system integrators will deliver a certain percentage on the license fees to Ripple, but the individual bank will not be a Ripple customer. Okay, so also this point he does neglect basically. I'm pretty sure all those which are on RippleNet using Xcurrent are just waiting, and I'm pretty sure it's more than 1,000 financial institutions, and we have worldwide Swift covers about 11,000, and that more than 1,000 is definitely very close to 10% of the world's financial institution. Argument number 8. Ripple has no choice. They have to raise the price, or Xrapid just doesn't work. You don't think they have a plan for this? Galgitron denies. I totally agree. This Shane Ellis theory certainly came from the banks themselves and not from the from Ripple. Argument number 9. Xrapid customers can use their stash of cheaper XRP to offset the slippage costs from sellers pulling on the price. He argues, and what about when that stash of cheaper XRP runs out? What do you do then? Totally agree. It's a ridiculous document. Argument number 10. More liquidity in the LPs can compensate for lower price. I think LP stands for liquidity providers. He has an argument where I totally agree. Last argument, we just need to get the price up high enough so that Xrapid can set the platform under it and keep it propped up. This is the chicken and the egg problem. Some argue utility and volume needs to rise such that the price can rise. I and Shane Ellis and many others argue once the price has risen, volume will come automatically. Thank you for your persistence staying with me. I'm looking to a fruitful discussion in the comments and maybe in my live stream next Tuesday at 2000 Central European Time.